restate my view on the YMCA. I don't believe that they need a YMCA right now, simply because there are membership dues. We have ventured in the area of fitness and sports facilities in Caroline County, only to see them fail, the latest one being the Virginia Sports Complex. This is not that the children need somewhere to go. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have the facilities. However, these facilities are not made available for our youth at peak times of need by the children. For example, we have a gym in here that is unavailable, I guess, on Fridays and Saturday nights for the guys to get together, ladies to get together and play basketball. There's nothing, we do not need to spend that much money to build a YMCA when we can simply pay staff to come right here to our community center. If it's a community center, it needs to be used that way. Our school libraries, we don't need to spend all this money on a library down in Dawn when the school libraries are not to their fullest potential. We need to make them available to the students as well. The computers in the classroom are not being used to their fullest potential as well. We have these stuff already available. We are simply not able or not willing to staff them for the benefit of the children and the people in the community. We do not need to be spending more money right now, especially on a Y or a Dawn library. I'm all for reading. I'm all for education. I am definitely a teacher by trade, but at this point in Caroline County, we do not need to spend this money when all of these things are already available. We simply need to pay the staff to man them. Thank you.
Others? If you would like to speak, come forward, state your name and voting district. And if you'd like to speak, come on down and get in line. We do have other business to take care of, but if you would, if you want to speak.
Oh, so I thought you had pointed to me.
All right.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Hi, my name is George Spinner, and I'm a proud resident of the Reedy Church District. Hey, Maxie. I'm here to talk about three things. One is the YMCA. First of all, let's stop kidding ourselves. This YMCA is not supposed to be for Caroline County. It's going to be for the affluent residents of Ladysmith. And I don't think the money should be used for anything along those lines. We have gymnasiums you can open up, just like other people have said. There are community centers, there are churches. I think all those could fulfill that need. Second, on the library in Dawn, as much as I would like to see that building constructed and opened, I'm not sure that there's ever been a study done that would even support patronage needed to open such a library. You know, I'd really like to see it built, but you know, right now with the economic situation the way it is, I'm not sure this is the right time. As for Caroline Pines and their situation, while I do feel for them, I did some quick calculations without a calculator and came up with the fact that at 381 homes at $2,800 for hookup fees, that's only $1 million. Where's the other $2 million coming from? For them to hook up and pay for this, their hookup fees would have to be about $8,400, and I'm wondering if they're willing to pay that. The other thing is there's a lot of projects out there that you all are looking at, and I got to tell you that I think this county needs to start living within its means. I have to live within my means. Most of these people here have to live within their means. And I think it's time for this county to start doing the same. If it means projects don't get done or certain things aren't being accomplished, then then that's the way it needs to be, at least for a while, until we can get ourselves in a financial situation where we're much more stable than we are right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Spinner. You would state your name and voting district. And if anybody else, please come stand in line, please.
Thank you, Chairman Rozelle, Vice Chairman Thomas, members of the board, Mr. County Administrator. My name is John Scott. I live on Claiborne Crossing, up here about 15 miles away. I just moved to the area, and I believe I'm the youngest speaker that's here tonight. So when I heard a couple individuals speaking about the young age of the future generation, I kind of had to have the chance to step up and actually say something when it comes to that point. I find it a bit frustrating with the mentality that I have seen throughout tonight's meeting when it comes to addressing budgetary concerns or budgetary suggestions as far as appropriations in a collective setting. And, you know, I'm not going to speak to the effect of whether or not I agree with specific appropriations, but the manner in which they are actually addressed. I believe it's a huge issue that none of these are going to be addressed, one, by a public hearing. There was one individual prior to me that did not say it, and I think that needs to be addressed. Each budget thing that is going to be suggested needs to be addressed individually, and I also believe they need to be prioritized. And then on top of that, we need to figure out how they're going to be funded, how they're going to be paid, and that's going to require a debt schedule of a complete nature to ensure that they're going to be paid at the time that they say they're going to be paid. You know, it makes me kind of scared that tonight we talked about money from the Recovery Act that's going to be used to fund teachers. Well, and it was suggested, well, it's going to be fine because it's not for 1 year, but we're going to make it 2 years. You want to talk about kicking the can down the road. There it is. And that makes me afraid that that money's not even going to be accounted for 2 years down the road. Or what are we going to address it then? And so it's the mentality, I think, is what the problem that I'm worried about, not the specific budget items. Now, this is a long-term fiscal reform that I want to see. And, you know, I think we're in a precarious situation right now where the grave's dug, the shovel's there, and the dirt's there. Now it's the choice between this board and the members here to determine whether or not they want to hop in that hole, pick up the shovel, and start digging out more dirt, just making the grave deeper. So I hope that each and every one of you tonight considers these individual budgetary items, you know, prioritize them and consider them as pieces, not as an entire section, which is all too often what higher levels of government do and get themselves into big trouble, in my opinion. That's just my 2 cents from a young man. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any others who'd like to speak to the board? Are there others who would like to speak to the board? Are there others who would like to speak? Public comment. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. And certainly I would like to reiterate to everyone that, you know, we heard each and every one of you, and we'll certainly have to take the things that you said into consideration, and we will do that. But one thing I think is very important to know that in Caroline County, we balance our budget every year. Every year the law requires us to balance our budget. We do not have a deficit. We balance our budget each and every year. Our tax rate is one of the lowest rates along the I-95 corridor. Even after the reassessments, we intend for it still to be the lowest along the 95 corridor. Our debt per capita is $3,260, and that's in line with counties our size and in the neighboring counties. There have been political tactics to scare employees to lay off more of them in upcoming months, and those tactics are irresponsible. We have no plans for layoff. We have next year we're adding 5 paramedics. We also hope to follow Governor McDonald's lead, and with our county employees, hopefully the plan is we're going to at Christmas time to be able to maybe offer them a merit increase at that period of time. Also, I hope as well that we'll be able to, in next year's budget, go back to our merit increases for our regular employees' budget. That's my plan. So hopefully we'll get into those projects. All the CIP issues that we talked about tonight, they all have to be evaluated, and we're going to evaluate the cost and how they're going to be paid, and just like we do with all our projects. There have been no final decision on all of these projects, and the board had a work session, and that's what it was, a work session to look at some of the plans that we have in the future, including some school plans. You know, so we do have many departments and many agencies that we try to do our best to do what we can for each agency and department. You know, it's not always easy, and we do have to make some tough decisions, and I hear a lot of you tonight, and we will continue to listen to you all and balance and what we do. So, again, you know, our tax rates are in 2000, our tax rate was 75 cents per 100. You know, now we're 53 cents. And, you know, we're going to keep it once we do the reassessments, you know, again, below the 70-cent mark, you know, is what I certainly anticipate. So, certainly, I encourage each one of you to talk to your board member. You know, we work for you. And if you want, anyone wants to talk to me, please, you know, give me a call, let me come talk to you, and I'll share what I have. And I encourage you to do with other board members the same. I'm sure they would certainly welcome that opportunity. So again, we do thank you for coming out tonight and sharing your points of view, and we do appreciate that. All right, the board would take a about a 5-minute recess, 10-minute recess. Caroline County Board of Supervisors, and at this time we'll ask that Sheriff Lipper would come forward. He has a report that he would like to make to us under item 8. Sheriff Lipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board of Supervisors, I come before you because I'd like to get your support to move Caroline County from the planning districts to further south to where we could come out of the greater Richmond area as opposed to the capital region in Washington, D.C. I think that would benefit all of us, not just in the law enforcement perspective, but all the services that we provide to our people, I think, are more closely related to Richmond to where we can meet our needs better. So with that being said, I'd answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Sheriff Lipper on his request?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers?
No, sir. I think explain to me.
Mr. Chairman, I've talked to Sheriff Lipper about this. One of the things that has been worked on, and I don't know if this will have an effect or not, I just want to have it considered, is that the folks that work for the federal government here really want to be in the Northern Virginia region because of the pay scale difference. And that in particular is Fort A.P. Hill. Dahlgren got that change a few years ago, or probably 10 years ago, and has a tremendous impact on pay scales. The only thing I just don't want to do is derail the work that's been going on to make them part of Northern Virginia.
Okay, Sheriff Lipper, can you?
Yeah, in doing so, as you well know, I've been with the Department of State Police almost 25 years, and in doing so, the State Police, Caroline County has always been Division I Richmond. And talking with Colonel Steve Flaherty and Bobby Orrick, it was one of the delegates I've already spoke to. He has written to the superintendent. There's no way that Caroline County will become part of that. They'll stay in the Richmond area. I know exactly what Mr. Seeley is talking about. From Fredericksburg up, they're in the higher pay scale, and that's for the state. And from where we are from locally for our jurisdiction, it's not going to affect our pay any. And what I'm looking at is to provide the services more for our people, where if you look at it just from the law enforcement standpoint, our jail is down in Hanover. When our social services come out of Richmond, I just think the needs that we have when it comes to when we deal with temporary detaining orders to where we have to have people with psychiatric evaluations, we're closer to Hanover than we would be to go to Mary Washington. I just proposed it to the board. I understand what Mr. Seeley's saying. I'm just hoping it only takes the act from the General Assembly to do what we're asking. So I asked the board to consider that.
Okay.
All right.
All right, comes as a recommendation from the sheriff that we make a, you need us to make a request to the General Assembly?
Yes, I think that would be appropriate.
Right, okay. So is it the consensus of the board that we would provide the letter the sheriff is requesting?
I'll make a motion to that effect, Mr. Chairman, because I've spoken to Mr. Lipper about this before, and I've said we have much more in common with Richmond than we do Northern Virginia. So I'd make a motion that the board prepare and submit a letter of support for the sheriff to consolidate law enforcement with the Richmond region.
Second.
My motion made and properly second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, we'll get you that letter, Sheriff. Thank you. Next week we'll go to public hearing, and tonight we have a public hearing on special exception 01-2010. Elizabeth J.V. Robinson and Virginia Joyce Vaughn, owner, Childress Consulting LLC, WC Motor Cars applicant. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the applicant is requesting a special exception in accordance with Article 17, Section 10, which is the standards for special use permits, and Article 9, Section 3, Paragraph 16, used car sales on tax map 13A-A, lots 4 and 5. The subject property contains slightly in excess of 1 acre and is currently zoned B1 business on the east side of Route 301, AP Hill Boulevard, in the Port Royal voting district. The subject property is just south of the Port Royal town limits. The applicant's requesting the use permit for used car sales and would also have auto detailing and maintenance associated with preparing the cars for sale. The 2030 comprehensive plan designates this property as being located in the Port Royal community planning area and designated for planned commercial with no specified density. The site contains an old service station which has been vacant for a number of years. The proposed use would take an unoccupied facility that's currently deteriorated and turn that into a use that would improve the overall value of the area, and the applicant has already made investment in the property to improve the visual impact of the proposed property. Parking of the vehicles for sale as well as customer parking would be limited to 12 spaces as shown on a general development plan, and all lighting would be located on the building with no fencing of any kind around the property. The applicant received approval from the health department to utilize the existing drain field for the proposed use. The use of the existing entrances has been approved by the Virginia Department of Transportation, subject to some recommended modifications in the entrance and exits to the property. The comprehensive plan designates this area as planned commercial. The property is already zoned B1, and used auto sales are permitted by a special exception permit in that zoning district. Several adjacent properties are zoned B1 as well, and several properties are also vacant adjacent to the site. Staff believes that the approval of this special exception will allow the reuse of an existing building in a manner appropriate to the area. The proposed use would likely generate less traffic and or noise than other by right uses that might be allowed on the property. The Planning Commission forwarded this application with a recommendation of approval to the Board of Supervisors, subject to the 6 conditions contained in the staff report. And staff will address any questions that the board may have.
Board members have questions of Mr. Fincham before the public hearing?
I have none at this time, Mr. Chairman.
None? Okay. No questions before the public hearing. We'll now declare the public hearing open. If there are any citizens who would like to come forward, please come forward and state your name, and you'll be reminded that you have a 3-minute time limit. Any citizens who would like to speak for this special exception 01-2010? Any citizens who would like to address the board on this special exception? Any citizens who would like to address the board on this special exception in this public hearing? Okay, is the applicant here this evening? Okay. Do you like to make any comments, sir? Okay. All right. Seeing no others, we'll now declare the public hearing closed. All right. Questions of the staff or applicant, board members, or motion would be in order?
I'd just like to make one comment, Mr. Chairman. I drive past that facility every day back and forth to work, and they've done a phenomenal job of fixing it up, and I got to say, it has really made a difference in Port Royal. I just want to applaud the work that you've done down there, because it really does look great. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Before we move forward, that the attorney would like to make a point.
I just was hoping Mr. Seeley in his motion, and if it could be included in the second, move that the special exception be approved based on a finding that it meets that the application meets the requirements of Article 17, Section 13C1, which you may remember is the finding that the use will not be detrimental to the character and development of adjacent properties and will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the provisions of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan. Just in making these motions, we need to follow the express language of the ordinance. So if you wouldn't mind including that in your motion.
Can you send that? Do I need to read it, or can we just?
You can, if you agree to amend it as I've just stated, that's fine.
If you want, I'll read it. It doesn't matter. I will amend my motion to move that the special exception be approved based on the finding that the request meets Article 12, Section 13C1.
I'll amend my second.
Okay, motions have been amended appropriately, and board members ready to proceed to vote. And all those members in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. All right, motion carries. All right, next we have item 5, continued discussion of Washington Rochambeau Victory Park. Mr. Wilson and see Mr. Mansell still here from the town of Bowling Green.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I know Mr. Wilson's here and up to the podium, but in order to save time for the other things, could we pull that item and put it on the agenda for next week? Because we meet next Tuesday.
Okay. That work?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we, okay.
Second.
All right, motion been made to pull that item and to review it next week.
Second.
A second. Motion made, 5 seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right, next we had the continued discussion of the proposed New Dawn Library branch. Kay Brooks.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I truly feel for y'all tonight, having to hear the comments from everyone. I feel for them because I'm a taxpayer myself. But I come to you tonight on behalf of the library. This is my third library. The first one was the Bowling Green branch when we got started in Bowling Green and we moved out here. The friend of the library had raised $100,000. We used that to get started doing the renovations in this very building. And then when Mr. Ashcraft came and decided to renovate the rest of the library, the rest of the building for the social services, the friends agreed to pay another $30,000 towards those renovations, which we did do. We don't come empty-handed tonight. We do come to ask for your blessings, but we have this. I have to say that this Dawn branch, it has my heart. It's a very needy community. The group that has been working on this branch for 3 years have been working very hard. It's like all of a sudden it has become a fixture of the community. They are doing monthly events to raise money for this library. There is a true need for this library, more so than in some of the other areas. And I hope that you will listen to Mr. Reynolds as he makes his presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Reynolds.
Good evening. How are y'all doing?
Doing well.
Well, we're here tonight. If you remember the last time I was here, it was back in July. We postponed from July to August to September. Now we're in a situation that we've held the bids for over 45 days. And I've talked with the contractor, and I've got an extension through the night's meeting. Just to remind you of a couple of things, the bid was $646,000. That is all inclusive of site work and the building. If we remove the site work, this building is less than $100 a square foot. It's about $94 a square foot. It's a price that we, as the architects, have not had in over 12 years, maybe more like 15 years. I can't say enough about the contractor has done his homework. We've talked to him. We've talked to him at length about the project. He's very excited about moving ahead with the project. I'm here to answer any questions I can. As I said, the bids were good for 45 days. We've got this to get through this meeting. We're here to hopefully get a positive vote to go forth and get this contract and get the project moving. I am here to answer any questions I can and give you any more information that I can bring to the table tonight.
All right, start off, Mr. Papa, do you have any questions for Mr. Reynolds?
I'm not necessarily for Mr. Reynolds, but at least for the group. In looking at this project, I'd like to, I know that the library folks have worked very hard to get extra funding for this, and I understand that. At some point, though, I think that I could support the project if we could look at trying to find grants to pay for some of this, some of the construction, some more donations, and I think there's some folks out there who would be willing to do that, but I think we need to talk to them. Having said that, I know that we need to move forward if we want to continue the project. So, have we looked at those grant opportunities, Mr. Reynolds?
Yes. We've looked at the values there. We've got some items that we can also use for contingency. As you all know, we've got some concerns that are in the budget for the removal and replacement of the soils on site.
Okay.
Part of the discussion I've had with the committee is some of the dollars that are in the bank at this point can be reserved, and once we get out of the ground, we can make sure before we purchase furnishings. So we've got a little bit of ability to fund any offset at that point. We also have store items we talked to the contractor about that we can hold in reserve until we get out of the ground. So we've got a contingency there if there's some issues, because both Kevin and I've talked the building inspector about the concerns there. So we've been able to make sure we've got a plan in case something does come up. If you remember, we do have a pile of dirt that's on the adjacent site that's been sitting there for a couple of years. We have that dirt to put back in on site that we moved several years ago, and it will help, and it is factored into the price of the contractor's price also.
Okay.
The building that you're proposing in Dawn, I know the library at Ladysmith, we have a conference room, a meeting room. Does this facility have one of those in it as well?
Yes, we do. We have.
Does that serve the community well? It's been a community used by the community, various groups and organizations, and that's been an asset, so I would hope it would be included in the Dawn Library as well.
Yeah, the building is designed with a meeting space, storytime room. The room is set up so that it can be used after hours without the library being open. The toilet facilities and the access to that meeting room are through a main entrance that goes into a foyer that then is locked off from the rest of the library. It does have bathrooms in that foyer. It also has in the meeting room a small refreshment area that would have a sink, microwave, and under-counter refrigerator. So not only is it available to the library during normal hours, it's available after hours to the community.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. You keep referring to just the building, and I've yet to hear anybody talk about water, sewer, or the road improvements that are going to be needed for that facility. Can somebody tell me how that's going to be done and what those costs will be?
Yes. The entrance from 301 is a VDOT approved entrance. The road that runs back approximately 300 feet to the parking lots are part of the contractor's bid price. The well and the force main were not in the bid price at the suggestion of the county. We worked with the county. We have a price for the county of $35,000 for that work. That work is not part of the $646,000. It is part of the number that we discussed being the total of a $700,000 budget. And we have talked with the county to make sure they're comfortable with the number. We've even offered, if we needed to get a secondary number. We're very comfortable with that. The county's very comfortable with that, with the work to be done. The road work, including all the parking lots, including heavy-duty paving, including piping to the well, power to the well, power to the pump, are all, site lighting, are all part of this $646,000 number.
So the 301 road improvement is part of the 638,000?
The VDOT entrance from 301 is part of this project.
Those are all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Vice Chairman?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, indulge me for a second. Mrs. Summer, you were the math professor. I just wanted to make sure I got your comment right. You called the library the People's University? Yes. Is that what you said? Okay. I was trying to type along, but I'm not quite as good a typist as people are speakers. So I thought that was interesting. Not really a question for you, Mr. Reynolds. It's the area seems to need something like this. There are no schools in that area. What was the Dawn Progressive Association is probably not utilized as much because that facility's bad. I guess the question for Mrs. Brooks is, we are going to somehow have internet connections in that area? Is that a Verizon DSL, or because there's no cable people for faster?
It's a T1 line.
Oh, right. You get a T1 because you get E-rated like the schools. So you get a T1 line for the cost of DSL, basically.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been through the T1 before. Okay. So your cost is minimal for that high-speed internet, which would give people in that area a place to come, look for jobs. Do we have computers already dedicated for it?
We have a computer lab in this building. Not only do we have a meeting room, but we have a dedicated room that houses 10 to 12 computers, and the equipment will be there when the library opens.
And that was the reference you made, so the room would be open even without the library?
No, the computer room is inside the library and is controlled to keep, that would not be after hours, but be during the time the library would be open.
Okay.
I might say this, that there's an interesting factor. We as a firm do a lot of rural libraries. And it's very interesting that we plan these libraries for 10 to 20 years worth of growth. 99% of all the libraries I've done in the last about 20 years of my life, within about an 8-year period, look at adding on to the library because the usage is so heavy. And we do, and I'm talking about libraries that are 5,000 to 6,000 to 7,000 square feet. It's just amazing. Once you build it, they will come. And that is a true fact with the library, because there's no internet, just like you talked about. You would say to yourself, well, everybody has a computer. Everybody has one at home. Why do you need to put them in libraries? You should go to the library sometime and look at the usage of computers in libraries. And then look at the usage of how many young adults and students come to libraries, bring their laptops, and we will have a route in this library, and set and use their own computer at a table in the library. It's just totally amazing, because you think they'll just go sit at home. Library brings people out. It's not just a depository of books any longer.
Yeah, Mrs. Brooks saw me quite a bit the last couple of weeks using the library for myself for that same purpose. So I understand that need. Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're really at the position now where we need to decide what's our next step. And another question?
I did, Mr. Chairman. Is there a possibility that we could find some way to get some help with the debt service on this?
What?
The debt service on this particular facility. And I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but some sort of offset on the debt service. Because I know that, and I'm not trying to be a spoil sport, but we've had that kind of help from like the Ladysmith Library and the other libraries in the past, and we're assuming the rest of the cost on this. I mean, I don't know if we want to hold a number to the folks, but
Are you referring to employee cost after we open the library? Because that's the other thing we're going to be faced with. We've let 10 people go, and we're going to have to hire people to work there. And I think the after cost after the building's built is a cost that we're not looking at. It still costs us to operate the library, and we've laid 10 people off from the county staff, and we're going to build a facility that we have to put people in. I'm not against the library. I just don't see that we have the money to go forward. It's not just the cost of the building, it's the cost of the building after it's opened. And nobody's talked about how we're going to fund that. We've talked to the library about their funding last year. We cut people. We cut their additional director to train somebody. Kay knows. But I don't see that we've got the funds to operate that library, even if we build it. It just doesn't fit into the profile that we're working from right now.
All right, Kay, can you respond to the concern that Mr. Popowitz has? It was just about continuing way that the community additional help with debt service.
The library board is prepared, just as when we opened the Ladysmith branch, the library board is prepared to take on more staff, and I think that the community is willing to work with us to help to fund more projects for it. The board realizes that we're going to be having to increase the staff, and they've decided we'll face it when we get to it.
We can't hear you, man. Or if you could just relay it to her and she could say it again, that'd be fine.
Well, the committee will still be raising funds, the committee's not going to stop. Once the building's built, we're going to furnish it. We will continue, we'll have volunteers, and we have to have our own, raise our own funds to pay someone who will. Because, I mean, there's still people back there laughing that probably never used the library, but that's fine. I know the resources in the library and how important they are. And there's nothing like that in Southern and Caroline County. There is no resources. And, yeah, we all go to Hanover. Are you proud of that? I mean, where the library is, the meeting room could become a nice, healthy, safe voting precinct as well. Meeting room could be used for seniors, youth, lots of activities. I've seen this.
All right.
Can I speak too?
All right.
Point of order.
Scheduled to speak? You open it up to her.
Point of,
I'm on the committee.
just point of order. She's chairman of the
Well, I'm on the
committee.
community committee, and we cannot afford it. We are not going to allow our taxes to increase to build anything. What about transportation to the library?
Okay, point of order. Point of order.
Chairman,
Yeah.
I might point out a couple of things. The design of this library is set up such that one FTE can run this library. In other words, if you looked at the location of the circulation desk is set up so that one person can actually man this library. We realize because it's a rural setting and because of dollars and cents, I think Mr. Seals, that has been taken into perspective from a design standpoint. We also realize that there's space in there. The reason for a break area in a library of this a lot of times is for volunteers, so that we can put lockers in there so that they can feel like they have a home, because it is very, very important that volunteers get the library started and moving. And I can tell you that this committee has been relentless in doing fundraising. And I think, Ms. Park, you would understand that there's several hundred thousands of dollars that they have already raised that have gone into this and will go into the furnishings of the library. If there is a number that we need to reduce the price, as I've said, we've got the ability that if we've got to do something from the committee standpoint, and I've met with the committee numerous times to say, if we've got a budget item or we've got a issue during construction, we cannot go back to the Board of Supervisors and say, we need this much money to pay for a door or pay for this or pay for that. We got to do it